This conference will now be recorded.
Before I turn it over to Mr. Peterson, I just want to tell everybody, Jerry forwarded, Mr. Vincent, Administrator Vincent forwarded a presentation from you that I guess you discussed with previous council
Yeah.
briefly back in the fall. And we're really just going to discuss that today. We could vote on it, but I'm not inclined to do that
No.
at this point. I want everybody to kind of kick it around over the weekend, think about it, and vote on Tuesday for our regular meeting, which I think most people are expecting, though I'm really pleased to see that we've got pretty good turnout here. So anyway, we struggled. Mr. Vincent sent me the information, I think it was Saturday, and we had a series of emails. We had Monday as a holiday. Tuesday was his only real working day. Wednesday was interviews for fire chief. He's out of town Thursday, Friday. We had to work around Mr. Peterson's schedule. So anyway, I'm glad that Ms. Medina was able to pull this together, and we'll have a few people be able to hear what we're talking about.
Yep.
And then we'll go on Tuesday and figure out what to do with the information. So
Awesome.
with that, Mr. Peterson, please.
All right, so we'll start from the beginning here. So typically what Collins uses this for is obvious. It's for, and this is kind of what I talked about with Jerry and John the first time, and I kind of slipped up the first time and mentioned it. It wasn't really the intent to actually put a proposal together and ever bring it toward the town, because the specific thing we usually use it for, which is older structures, older bridges that are hard to reach. A lot of times we use things called sprat and dive to get to areas that you can't normally just walk to and see. So an example would be this archway over the water. You can't get to that without a lift, without a boat, without something that requires some person to be in danger in some extent to get to it. So we use these for very large structures or structures that are extremely old and hard to get to. So that's where the true application of this from Collins' standpoint came from. And that's part of the reason it has to be, we have to have the option for it to be so accurate, because you'll see in the two models I'm going to show you where we do not notate the defects on the structure. The drone and the computer itself does. And then we verify as the engineer and stamp that we're in acceptance of that we're still accepting the liability of whatever defects it is we found and that they were obtained through that. So the initial way that this was brought up was kind of in a general conversation. It wasn't a dirty car salesman pitch to the town to try and get any more money spent on the pier, because that was actually what I had told Jerry, was that the main reason I didn't bring it forward was because of the cost behind it. I didn't really, me personally, with the experience of the project, thought there had been enough money spent on the pier for the town, and it just, kind of didn't seem like a smart decision to bring forward. I'd still discuss it to some extent with John about its applications and everything like that. And I'd actually discussed it maybe in 5 to 10 years is when it would be applicable. After you've had it for a little while and you want a structural inspection of it done, we could give you a 3D model of the pier, accurate up to a 1/16 of an inch, and the town would have that. It's the town's property. The town owns it. They can do with it what they please. So with that, we kind of pushed it off the table, didn't worry about it. A few weeks later, Jerry asked me about it again. We revisited it. I got Mark Barrett, who was our head guy at Collins, to get on a phone call with me, Jerry, and John, and we went over it for about an hour, showed them the same exact thing I'm going to show y'all today, explained what it was, what its intended applications are that we use it for, what it can be used for, and we went from there. And then we kind of, as the transition through councils and stuff, kind of understood it wasn't the best time to really bring it forward until now. So the real reason we are here today, apart from showing you what it is and what it can do and how it's beneficial to you, was the discussion of the amount of corrective work that has had to be performed on the pier, the amount of corrections that have had to be made in general to certain work that we've observed not in compliance has had to be redone multiple times, things like the pier access gate, the shade structure, just kind of all of that as a whole. We kind of felt something needed to be done. The typical old school way of doing it, as far as substantial completion, is for me to walk around the entire pier and take thousands of photos of everything and try not to miss anything. And we use that in conglomeration with your as-built, and we say, here's your final product, here's what you got. And then you would at a later date use that for your warranty claim. If you went up the monumental stairs and the finish had started corroding for some reason, well, you may look and say, oh, it's because the welding or the work on it ruined the finish and now it's rusting. Let's go back and look at a picture and confirm that it's failing. Oh, Zane from Collins missed that photo, or Zane didn't quite get that area. Now you're in an argument about, was it there before, when did it occur, that sort of thing. So all of that said, the main application that I spoke with Jerry about today was about giving the town a much more accurate rendering of what it is has actually been accepted as substantial complete or final complete, what your final product was. So the idea here is exactly what it is. It is we take a drone with a bunch of cameras on it. It takes hundreds of photos at a second. And when I take that back and I render that and I put it all together, what it creates is a 3D model that you can completely move around in and out of on the pier. That's what it creates. So where that's applicable, we'll talk about in a minute, but just for you to understand, that's exactly what is happening. And it will take, I'll be out there probably 10 or 12 hours with my drone pilot scanning every single angle, up, bottom, down, left, right of the pier. This is just kind of going through what exactly it is, annotating specifically what it's going to create. Those are the drones themselves. Those are just two models. One of those is the one that we use for the pier itself. Because of the hot topic that it is and the amount of corrective work, we're obviously going to use the better of the three drones that we have to give the best model of the entire thing. This is just some general photos, and this is the presentation that I sent you about showing that no, it's not just an outer extent scan of the entire thing. The drone will go underneath, up into any gap, that sort of thing, and you truly, at the end of the day, will have every square inch of that building visible on a model. So where that comes into play is there was a crack on the ramp, for example, and it was sealed. Well, then in a year, still in that warranty period from the contractor, the crack suddenly has reappeared, and it is obvious it was because it wasn't corrected. It wasn't corrected the correct way the first time. That's grounds for you to require the contractor to come back out there and fix his work and seal it correct the second time. So this is just a general photo of a bridge up in, I believe, Milwaukee, with a lot of section loss, a lot of rust, a lot of potential issues that we can notate without having to hang up underneath it and potentially miss something. This is just kind of a specific thing showing you the amount of detail that it can go. This was a W, I think 6x14, and they just kind of scanned it and put it in here as a reference to show you that really the key area that they're trying to highlight is that this tiny piece that they scanned with the drone, they were able to sit here and measure this entire flange depth, which is 1/16 of an inch. That was them showing that that reference to a 1/16 of an inch is accurate. It was just trying to give someone something visible to actually see. Here's another picture, and you'll see something very similar to this here in a minute on the actual system. So that's where we're going to go with our conversation. I'm going to show you what it is that you're getting. Rio Grande Bridge was one that we did it on. This is a very large bridge, I think, from top to bottom, and this is kind of in here to drive the point home as to why we use it. With, if we didn't have this drone, what would essentially occur is we would have sprat climbers hang off the side of that bridge and climb around it like a monkey and take every picture, have to measure with a measuring tape, all that stuff. And there's still, to that point, places you cannot get to. You're going to be looking through binoculars 10 feet away from it, looking up, trying to see what it is. And at the end of the day, you still can't measure it, so you can't truly ensure it's accurate. So point of that being, that's its true application in this stance. And here's an example of that occurring. That's what would have to happen over the entire, I think the Rio Grande Bridge it's 1,700 feet long, and from top to bottom down there that you're looking at from him is, I think, close to 400 and something feet. So if he falls, it's a 400-foot fall. It's to increase the safety. So here's that same thing, just so that we all understand these are just depictions of the landing zone for it. That's just something that we put out so the drone sees exactly where it needs to land, and because it does the path itself. We're not out there the entire time using a remote control like you see in videos. This is something that is geospatially connected, so it connects to all the satellites in outer space, and you set its path, but it flies all of it itself. And if it misses an area, it comes back to that area and does its entire scan until it's happy with what it's got. This is just kind of going over different stuff. 1,600 image or 6,000 images taken of this certain area using the Skydio 2 drone. Arrow points is a reference to these squares down here, which are digital. They also help connect to the satellites. This is just minute stuff that we'll worry about when we're out there doing it, but just so that y'all understand what's truly going to occur. This is an example of inside of the program itself, and what this is these are detail lines that the computer has generated to accurately measure. So in its computer thinking mode, this is just a portion of it, but we can access that and make sure that it is truly accurate. It's just going over the pre-planned USA missions, manual missions, AI missions, and that's just talking about we can fly the drone individually if we want to. If not, we can allow the satellites to do it. Typically, if there's a super hard area, for example, one that would be a hard area to get to on ours is the utility lines hung up underneath the pier. Some of those areas are a foot from the top of the deck. Some of those areas are 3 inches. So that you kind of have to be able to really wiggle that drone in there and get all of that to make sure you're still getting that full depth scan on it. This is just talking about the post-processing, cloud sharing. That is what is sent in our proposal from our conversation with Jerry and John is the two options true at the end of the day are either the town can have it in their full complete possession, which the town would then have to buy the system for it, or there's a portion there, I think it's $200 a year for Collins to keep it safe, locked away. We update it, we make sure it has everything it needs so that if the town does this, doesn't use it for 6 years, and then someone gets in there and wants to really use it, they can get into it in about 2 seconds and not have to worry about did the file corrupt, did something happen, anything like that. So $200, and that is simply for us to maintain everything for you, the software, all that stuff. If anything goes wrong with it, that sort of thing, it's all on us to fix. Controlling of the file, it is still at the end of the day the town's. No one, and that was kind of what I clarified in the email with Jerry earlier, was no one can access the file unless you tell us they can access the file. This is a piece of property of possession of the town of Surfside. So it cannot just be shared amongst, even if we wanted to use it in a presentation, we have to come to the town and say, hey, we would like to use this for X, can we do that? So this is at the end, and it'll really, the two people who will have control over that will be the mayor or the town administrator. If one of them leaves or is removed, the other will have justifying power to take control of the entire thing. That's one of the things that the cloud sharing Collins will facilitate, making sure if something happens that we know who to contact to give proper authority to have access to it. This is actually the bridge that I'm going to show you here in a little bit because it's a great example of the archways. It's hard to get in between all of these piles as a spratt climber. They can't simply connect between this column and this support element here. Portions of it are over water. Portions of it are at areas you can't set a lift on and get to. It's a very hard bridge overall to get to. So we use the drone to facilitate why it's better. This is just stuff that it helps us go with. USA Field Data Capture, which is that drone itself, the digital twin creation, which is what you're going to see. An office pre-inspection of all the equipment, making sure it's all kept. Field inspection is the actual use of this product. So that's where if the town were to call Collins in 5 years and say, hey, we want this thing inspected, that's what we would refer to as inspecting the pier. We're doing a field inspection of that. We're just going to use the drone this time to do it. And then ultimately, another great part of it is rehabilitation, design, and plans. The reason that's more important to Collins and it's in our presentation is because, like I said before, that's what we typically use it for, is older structures that need repairs and we can't quite get to an area, so we use the drone to scan it. Suddenly we know accurate square footages, inches, all that stuff of actual areas that need to be repaired. Here is just an example of, and this wasn't really necessarily a great scan, but it's just showing that it's picking up the truck, stuff like that. This would be a key area that we really want to get into. These blue dots here are data points that its path that it flew, where it scanned left, scanned right, scanned in, scanned out. You can see some of the points inside where it's flown underneath the bridge. You can see the ones up top where it's picked up to scan the entire deck. Obviously, flat surfaces like roadways are the easiest thing to scan. Surely the pier doesn't have any areas that are really going to be hard to get to because it is an open structure. This one is also another one that you're going to see here in a second. This isn't the Robert Street Bridge. This is the Robert Street Bridge. It's just in a different portion of it, in a different part of the city, but it's all part of the same route. Same deal, it's just a change in structure. And underneath here, you'll see in a minute on the 3D model, there's just a key area here where it's super hard to get to, but the drone's able to navigate into that area, get an accurate scan. This is just going over the use of artificial intelligence, which I do believe is actually highlighted in this report that was provided. Who, I think, Mr. Kinkin, did you provide this report here?
Yes.
Okay, so this report here highlights that same stuff as well. Here's an example I'll show you here in a minute. This is not something that we had to go back in, and this is kind of what I was talking about with Mr. Krause earlier. The projector is not going to exactly show you what I'm looking at because of the resolution of the projector is not as good as what's on the screen. There are lines here, very detailed lines, tracking what this is. It's a SPAL at the end of the day. It's a defect that Collins Woodrow can issue to as a structural engineer. And right here is showing you that it's calculated the square footage of that defect. So if the town were to ever need repair documents for this or any other item that they ever wanted scanned, it does all of that as well. We go out there and for the most part self-verify. Every single one of these flags, and this is more of the inspection aspect of it. If we were going out there and scanning your pier at 10 years old and it did have some defects, had some large cracks, it had spalls on the concrete, anything like that, that's where we would really use this element of it. And all these little flags here are where we went back as a structural engineer and notated what exactly that is. The computer, the AI itself doesn't spit it out and say, oh, this is a SPAL. It looks at a defected area, does its AI calculations and highlights it. We go back and look at it and say, that's what this is for. Here's another example. This is kind of trying to highlight to you where exactly this was in reference to the bridge we looked at a minute ago. So that was this bridge on this bottom side. There's a very small pocket on the other side of this bridge that you cannot crawl into, but the drone was able to get in there and scan all of this. This is the pocket here, but it's just highlighting where it was able to get to, what it's capable of. And then here is the other one you'll see in just a second. This is all these little blue lines here are cracks that the drone has detected up to a 1/16 of an inch wide, and it does all the lines, does all the math for you and everything like that. Here's another example. These are all SPALs, so when we go into it the first time, this is what it will look like to us. We'll know what that is. It measures the rebar length, exposure rebar, stuff like that as well, and then as a structural engineer, we'll go back in and add all of those little flags you saw and notate what exactly defect that is and what our opinion of it is, what needs to happen to it, that sort of thing. Here's some benefits that again, this is referenced more towards the use of bridge DOTs. It's just going over the data quality of everything, reduce risk for designers, contractors, better collaboration and inclusion. This is kind of getting more toward the point of if you were looking at an old structure and you wanted to replace it in kind. That's what they're trying to highlight here, is that you could use this to get to that. We're gonna go through specifically why this applies to the town in a second, but I've got to go through the whole thing. And then here's, this is the last slide, but this is just the guy using virtual reality to view it. Not sure if that's something the town wants to do, is buy a set of Oculus goggles and play with the 3D model. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But in there, they don't do a real good job here of showing you what exactly is happening. But with the goggles on, he's in a little world and he can play with it and move it around and do everything you're going to do on the computer, but he can do it with his goggles on. So that's all that is. All right. So with that, I would like to go over specifically why I and the town of Surfside is discussing this, what the goal is here, why is it even being, brought in front of you. Like I said before, the idea was it would be really cool to have a 3D model of the pier, because there is no structure like that yet that has been scanned. We haven't used it for anything like that, and Collins owns all of this stuff, so when I say that, that's why. When I saw the price tag the first time, I was like, no, we're just not doing it. That's not justifiable. We don't really need it. We can do it the old school way. That's the way it's been done forever. And then when I spoke with Jerry about it again later on, Jerry brought it up, and I kind of just went through it and showed him all the details. So really the issue with this whole thing is the warranty period. And for that, we have to better understand why it's applicable. So for all of us to understand, when I signed the contract over, we just did the substantial completion inspection Tuesday. When after whatever issues that we found are corrected, and the time that I issue substantial completion, that is the town's resemblance of saying, okay, we accept it. There's some nitpicky things left, such as a piece of door jamb needs to be repainted. It enters you into the general acceptance of the pier. So the condition that it's in right then is what you've accepted. So if there's a defect somewhere and we miss it, but you've accepted it, and there's any sort of picture or anything that shows it was there, you've accepted that item as is. And that's kind of where you get into the issues of, if you come up within a year and you're still in that warranty period and a bunch of things go bad on the pier within a year, whether it was shoddy work of an overhang, or it was a frame out of a window suddenly is sagging or something like that, and the glass has started cracking. Unless you have a picture that shows otherwise, there's a large potential for the contractor to look at you and say, not our fault. That's something that y'all did. Y'all had someone come in here and they put something in the roof that they weren't supposed to, and it's overloaded it, and now you've cracked the window because it's your fault. It's not our fault, it's your fault. So get away from us, that sort of thing. The idea that I spoke about with Jerry was providing this rather than, and the town's still going to have their true original as-built drawings and documents and everything that went in it. But the idea here is the ability to go back and pinpoint something up to a 1/16 of an inch before that warranty period starts. So that within a year, within 5 years, within any of those time periods or those warranties, you have an accurate to a 1/16 of an inch model that cannot be argued because you missed a picture, you missed an angle, you missed any sort of defect potentially. It's providing you with non-arguable evidence is really what it's giving you. At the end of the day, you can go around through it, you can go to, and we'll see it here in a minute, the model of the tiny crevices, all these areas that you can go into and they can't argue with it. Because that's truly why we're here at the end of the day, is we're all aware of the work, the rework that's had to be done throughout the entire pier, the amount of times that damage has occurred due to improper construction, all the stuff that's had to be corrected. And the idea is that the town gets a piece of evidence that no one can argue with. It's time stamped, cannot be adjusted. It's there. They can't say, well, we don't know if you didn't scan that after you saw the defect or before. It's all of that is dealt with by the timestamp on the data. So I can't just go in there one day and change the date on it. I can't make it say tomorrow if it wasn't scanned tomorrow. That's all encrypted in the drawing and all that stuff. So it's a non-arguable piece of evidence, really, is what it is at the end of the day. thought I'd just kind of stop here and give, if anyone has any questions or anything.
I just need clarif, two things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We do have Robert's rules.
okay, Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead,
I have
Mr.
a
Wallace.
question for Zane, I'm sorry.
We do have to follow Robert's rules
Okay.
in this meeting.
Okay, two things, on our pier.
Yeah.
What you're saying is the drone would be able to do a much more
Yes, it'll, and I'm gonna show you here in a minute, it's gonna, this bridge
than you could
specifically.
do otherwise?
Yeah.
Because you said our structure's not quite as complicated.
Yeah.
As some.
What, and the kind of the difference there is, I'm going to get, it removes human error, is what it does. I'm going to get areas that I think of, I'm not going to sit there and take a picture of every single picket along the length of that pier, but it will. I'm not going to take a picture of every single connection on the pier, but it will. Every square footage I can't access the entire bottom length of that pier, I can't access the piles, but it can. I can't get to certain parts of the roof, but it can. All of that. It gets everything, but that's the gist of it, that's why.
My second question is,
You've got the floor.
where I was, this is legally acceptable?
Yes,
Has this ever?
yes, that's what.
Anything like this ever been presented in court and you won because this technology was superior to?
So no, we've never used it in court, but the point of it is because it's never been applied in this manner. It's always been applied as a DOT accepting it within all of its exceptions under the UAS and then the federal government flight requirements as an accurate detail. At the end of the day, Collins, a PE, still has to stamp what we're providing you. So we're taking the liability of saying whether it's accurate or not. It's not on the town to prove that. It's up to us to prove that.
Okay.
We have no concern with it. That's why we always use it for bridges, structures, all of that stuff. It's just a matter of, does the client want it? Does the client really think that it's justified to do it, is really what it is. But it's really when you get into the courtroom that were to occur, they're going to look at all of your timestamps, all of that stuff. And that's why a lot of that, I reiterated that early on, is because that's going to be the first thing that a defense attorney pulls up. Is, oh, we don't know when this was scanned. This could have been done whenever. This could have been manipulated. The whole point of the certifications behind this drone and everything that it does is to remove all of that. It can't be manipulated. To manipulate it, you have to go back out there and rescan it completely. You can't go in and alter what things look like. This is all a one-time thing. So if I scanned it today and then I went out there tomorrow and scanned it again and something had happened, I can't morph the two together and make it look a certain way. Someone will be there without adjustability will be able to go and look in and say, okay, this one was scanned at 119 at 130. This one was scanned at 120 at 145. You can't morph the two. There's no Photoshop capabilities in this item because that's the point. It's to remove human error, human ability to adjust what's actually there, is what it is. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor,
Before we move into any more questions, are
Yeah.
you basically done the presentation?
No, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna show you very accurately what exactly it is and what it will look like that you're going to have. That's what this is up on the screen. I just haven't clicked into it and moved it yet.
How much more content do you think you have?
Until y'all are comfortable or y'all feel that y'all got the point of what exactly it is that you're gonna have. This is me showing you your final product. This is what you'll have in your possession.
I think I want to finish that before we start
Okay.
taking more questions.
Okay.
You okay
I've
with
got a
that?
question though before we get to that point, I think, to
All right,
my
go
own mind. If we have a problem.
Yeah.
On the pier, we'll say within that year, do you come back out with that drone and scan that place again
Yeah, we can.
at town's cost? Or is that at a cost that we're paying that $250 a year to
No, so
maintain?
the $250 a year is for us to maintain the file and everything. I will say, the cost to scan it again is nowhere near what this is. this, majority of this cost is for the first initial rendering of the item. Because the system, it has to, the first time you do it, there's just more data that it has to collect. The second time, it will compare the first to the second and already have its path, already have 50% of the work that has to be done before you come out there. So it won't be a price tag like this one is for the first initial one. But now, with the first one within a year, we could scan it, but you wouldn't really need to. If you've identified the area of concern, then that's how you have to find each individual area of concern. You can't just look at the entire thing. So say for issue, the issue was on the podium or on the outside face of the podium and a crack had occurred. You don't have to rescan the entire structure again to do that. You just go in here, you take pictures of what you have, measurements, and then you go back in here and look, was it there before or not? You don't have to rescan the entire thing unless that's something that you want to do. I would advise that that's not an occurrence. Typically, I would say that you have it scanned now, and unless there's a major structural damage that occurs, you have it scanned again in 10 years. If you know, because there's going to be some cracks and stuff like that, but nothing should really happen that you're going to need a completely new scan of the pier.
Yeah, but if we have a hurricane,
Mhm.
just for instance, we have a big hurricane out here.
Yeah.
And after the hurricane, they go out there and find a structural damage to that pier.
Yeah.
Pillar, one of the podium pillars, whatever.
Yeah.
Would that be a cost to the town to come back out and scan that again?
Yes. But what I'm trying to tell you is, in those situations, you wouldn't need to have it rescanned. That's not a reason to have it rescanned. I understand, the pillars would never, I'm not trying to run around in a circle. Pillars would never come out from underneath the pier. They're driven 100 foot into the ground. But that whole thing, if you're looking at the damage, if you see the damage that has occurred, you're using this to compare it to what you've observed. So you're not comparing this scan to that scan. You're comparing what you've observed physically on site, and you go back and you reference this and say, there's the difference. What happened? A hurricane happened and the pier got knocked out, or the podium, something happened to it. But there's not a rescan. That this for the town is a base model. That's what this is for. This is a as accepted piece of equipment, not removing the idea of pictures and all that stuff, hoping you got every single angle, all of that stuff. This gives you the ability to go back and look for something like that in comparison to what it is you actually accepted. Does that answer your question, or do you feel like I kind of danced around it? Because I don't want it to be that
I feel
way.
like you're dancing around it.
Okay. I'm trying to.
Because this cost of what you presented to us today.
Yeah.
Is pretty, pretty.
Correct. Correct.
I'd hate to say in 5 or 4 years or 2 years, we've had some kind of structural crack come back into the handicap ramp, for instance, and it needed to be scanned. You couldn't walk in there physically to see it. I'm worried about what it's going to cost in the future to what we've already paid to get it done. Again, that's where I think you're kind of dancing around the question.
And this is, and what I'm trying to say is, as nicely as possible, is that wouldn't be our recommendation to scan it again. That's what I'm saying. There wouldn't be a scanning it again. If something's cracked, it's cracked. The only thing we would use this for is to go back and look, was it cracked when we accepted it? If not, okay, great, it's cracked. Why is it cracked? And then from that point, it's back on the structural engineers to determine why it's cracked and who's at fault for it.
Okay, I'd like to
Okay.
have you finish now before we do any other questions.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so this structure here is that a portion of that Robert Street Bridge. This is the actual model that we took a snippet, a cut sheet out of, and it's all of these highlighted areas here. Let me see if I can. All right. I want to try and make it bigger real quick for y'all. Okay, so this is what occurs after we've done the scan. So this is what the drone puts together. It's gonna be a little bit harder for me to navigate here, but it'll be okay. So typically when I'm doing this, or y'all will also have to, there's a mouse. You need to have a mouse to truly be able to look through this thing. I mean, doing it on a laptop's not the best. So in general, what you're seeing is all of these little miniature cones here are parts where the drone has highlighted something over and over and over again. So with that being said, this is the crack that it highlighted. We're gonna keep going in, and this would be, drone probably was flown 4 foot from the pier, which is what that price is for. I missed that part. That price is based on the town wanting the highest resolution. So the ability to come this close up and see the paint chipping off of concrete within a 3-inch square. That's where that price is. I can go out there at the end of the day within a day, and would be the same rate as a day of me working on the project, and scan the entire thing. And I can scan it 10 feet away, I can scan it 4 feet away, I can scan it 50 feet away. If I scan it 50 feet away, it doesn't take the computer but about 20 minutes to put it together, because it's going to give you a really, and I can show you one of those, it looks great from far away. You zoom up, you can't do this. The towns is based on the resolution that was requested, which is up to a 1/16 of an inch. So this crack here was exactly that. I pulled these up to highlight. This crack was a 1/16 of an inch wide. And when you go into the actual model itself, which y'all will be able to access, it tells you that. I've got it in the abbreviated version right now because it'll crash because I'm connected to my computer and that whole internet chess piece right now. But when you come into it, it will highlight that. So that's just really trying to drive home the point of the detail that goes on it and what it's actually doing. You're rotating around, you're moving, it takes the entire thing out of question here. So then here's another example of the top of deck. And the reason I'm really gonna hit the top of deck here is so a minute ago we referenced the railings along the length of the pier. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to show you what the railings look like. Okay. So this blue crack here on the railings, now this entire bridge itself was shot at a 9-foot distance. So your error is because what error you see is because it was flying 9 foot. Again, the town's is priced based on flying 4 foot away from everything over the entire length of it. Sorry, I'm trying to just navigate. Should have brought a mouse. All right, so here's the same deal. A spall, which is a bust out in concrete. You walk up and it just looks like a big hole fell out of it. This is that same ordeal. This system here doesn't have those highlighted. That's something the town will be able to go back and look. Do we want to look at spalls? Do we want to look at cracks? Do we want to look at everything all at one time? It highlights all of them, and there'll be a list that comes up where you can go through every single one of them. It numbers them. So here are the railings here, and I'm going to come at it from an angle just so you can kind of see a little bit better. But it's picked up, it picks up the dimensions of it as you go. So I could come in here, the town could, the public facilities director, anyone can come in here that has access to it and measure the entire, any part of the structure you can measure. It's, again, taking all of that from the satellites, doing all the AI knowledge with it, and you pretty much at the end of the day, you can come in here and measure something 6 inches wide, 2 inches wide. Is that picket a 1x1? Is it a 1x3? What is it? That's the other application here. All right, I'm going to come to Let's see. Here's another segment. So, and this will be the deliverable that's given to the town will be similar to this. So it will be broken up into sections, or it can, you're gonna have multiple, you can break it up, you can break it into segments, you can put it all together at one time. It's however you wanna see it, it's how you wanna see it. That's part of the control point of just y'all being able to, and I think initially if the town decides to do it, we can have a powwow between Barrett and us, John and whoever else y'all feel that we pretty much sit through a class and we show you how to do everything on it. So that there's a basis of knowledge for him to teach, maybe one of his subordinates or anything of that matter. There's a class that can be taught for that training. I'm just kind of moving around here. I'm going to show you the other bridge here in just a second. Sorry, I'm struggling here to get to the internet. Again, this is just the same thing. It's the same bridge, different portion, and it's just showing you the areas that we scanned. It scanned all this entire area underneath the river. I don't have any cracks or anything highlighted on this one right now, just to kind of show you a basis. The issue with this area in particular, you can see here is all those spalls, all the cracks. Here you go. See if it'll work. So this is an impending spall, meaning this top crack just hasn't connected yet, but that concrete at the end of the day is going to bust out and you're going to have a bunch of exposed rebar. So with that, this is just so you zoom and see kind of, well, that's a little bit further away, but from right here, if I can get back underneath the bad boy. Okay, it's freaking out because we're about on the internet right now. That was one of the moving pieces here, was making sure that I had internet to connect to a computer that had internet to connect to the rendering machine. If y'all have it, that doesn't have to happen, but since I'm on a laptop, there's a couple more moving pieces than just that. All right. I mean, if I can continue showing you as many as you want, it's however you want to. I don't want to bore y'all to death with showing you it, but if there's any questions or anything you want to see, I can show you other structures. We've done water towers, berth walls for massive freight ships. We've done roadways, highways, bridges. I used it down in Savannah for the Savannah Storehouse. It's their historic train station, and there's a lot of historical preservation that goes on down there. So I had to have a lot of heavy details for everything. And I used the drone to scan the entire thing to come up with much more accurate, to save money, save historical society money, instead of contractor coming out there and saying roughly 200,000 square foot. I can give them that and they can go, oh, okay, no, 1,600 square feet, we're good. There's multiple applications for it. Where I identified it with Jerry again was that the warranty periods and everything coming up because we're at substantial completion. The idea of voting on it on Tuesday was that substantial completion is not going to be issued on Tuesday. It's going to be issued here in the near future, but with that in mind, giving the town the most accurate depiction of every single thing it is that they have. If something is to come up any further regarding this pier later down the line, you have something you can go back and reference and say, this is what it looked like, this is what we accepted. No, we're not accepting that, whatever it is in question. Would y'all like to see more? Or is it?
I think we've probably seen enough
Okay.
pictures to know what it can
Okay.
do. Does anybody need to see more?
No.
Okay. I think, again, we can understand the capability. It looks good. I appreciate that it worked this well
Yeah.
And our first real try to do a live presentation, so.
And another
That's
one for the scans, the thing is I'll scan it the first time. If for some reason the town wants an inspection performed in 2 years, we don't rescan the bridge. I go back and I can notate it in here for you to always have. And as you do that, the first time I inspect it, if I see a spot, I'll call that out, I'll mark it. Well, the next time, say in 2 more years you want it inspected, if it's been repaired, you notate that. If the town wants it completely rescanned again, so be it. That's a town decision. But the means behind it, does it need to be scanned or not? It isn't really a question. That's up to the town. Do they want it rescanned again? It's like I said, the price is nowhere near what it is now because of the initial rendering and everything that has to go on, because there's paths and all that stuff that have to be set up for it. But the other part of that cost is the resolution. It's not really anything other than that. To achieve that resolution for the pier, it is going to take me 12 to 14 hours of scanning to get that sort of quality of the entire pier. The town didn't want that. If the town wanted to take a little bit more risk and say, well, we don't really think we need all that, the price goes down. It's all based on the amount, high quality of what you get is really what it is. That's what's driving the price home on that.
All right, well, thank you very much. I would like to now open it up to questions from council.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Fallon?
I have a
Yeah.
two-part question here. The maintenance fee of $250 a year, does that go up over
No.
time?
No.
That stays the same
Well,
for the
yeah.
life?
We can keep that the same.
Okay. The second part, say unfortunately it's not if, it's always when a hurricane comes. So a hurricane comes and it basically destroys 50% of the pier. To rescan it,
Mhm.
I would think that after a rebuild, you want to rescan it, correct?
Correct.
But
If this pier ever collapses, we have a lot of big issues. This
I'm
isn't-
talking buildings,
Yeah.
windows,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
And that's the other part too, we're getting at, is that it can help with all of those insurance claims on behalf of the town as well. This is what it looked like initially. Post-hurricane, this is now what it looks like. You don't have to argue or hassle with the insurance company on was something damaged because of the hurricane or what did it look like prior to that.
So once it's fixed, hopefully limited damage,
Mhm.
we would probably have to have another rescan because it's new design, new
Mhm.
windows. There's regulations you gotta follow as
Yeah.
years go on. So does that come with a new cost of the scan and then a new cost of maintaining that scan?
The main maintenance scan is going to stay the same for
For that scan, but what if you get another scan?
No, it's $250 a year for us to maintain the file for you.
But we would still have to pay for a new scan.
For that portion of whatever it is you're wanting scanned. If you want the entire pier scanned, yes. If you're just wanting a building scanned, no. I mean, it's not gonna be the same price. If you don't want the same higher resolution this time, price won't be as much. I mean, you're talking like we're portions of portions. So if you just want the building rescanned and us to go in there and plop the new building down onto the podium, that is something we can do, but there will always be a time conflict now because of the timestamps on the two. So I can go in there and cut one piece out and put that piece in, but there will always be a timestamp issue with it. You can't use it at that point and try to say one part of this was damaged and the other part wasn't. That timestamp of the security part will no longer be there. They will be able to tell that it has been cut and chopped at some point and something has occurred to the file.
I'm just bringing this up, the fact that we have to accept, if we vote a yes on this, we also have to accept down the road that we're gonna have more costs due to hurricanes.
Yeah.
And weather or whatever.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Coleman?
I got a couple concerns.
Okay.
Right on your opening.
Yeah.
You started with, that you slipped it out about this. And then you said you wouldn't recommend it to do it until 10 years, up until Mr. Vincent, Jerry, called you up and said, hey, why don't we do this now? So in your professional opinion, at first it was, you don't need to do this. 10 years from now is a good time. And another point is, we'll scan the pier when everything is supposed to be good.
Mhm.
I mean, every nook and cranny should be good. Okay? But we have a storm, heavy storm, or we see cracks and stuff like that. We're not gonna, you're advising not to scan the whole pier. Well, if I got a crack here and I got a crack there, well, why aren't we scanning the whole pier to make sure the underling, where you can't see, is scanned? If the cement wasn't poured correctly, and it's losing, it's cracking, it's chipping out,
Mm.
well, why aren't we doing that $17,000 scan to begin with?
Okay, so maybe I misspoke on the 10-year thing. For a project that has not had as many conflictual issues and friction and all of the stuff that has been within question by Collins through the entire length of the project, no, I wouldn't tell a client you need a 3D scan of it, because I'm not in the car salesman game. I'm not trying to sell you this product. The only conversation that ever came up following that discussion was because of the amount of issues that we're still dealing with today, as of Tuesday, and the amount of corrective work that has had to be performed on the pier, and people asking, are we going to be substantially complete? And the whole discussion of, well, Collins accepted it at this point in time, what did it look like? That's the part behind there. Because of your project or your pier and the issues that have occurred with the contractor on it, it was discussed about the additional security of being able to use this to create that. If the town decided at a later date they wanted a 3D model of the pier, great. And that's what was originally discussed, was at some time after the pier is done, hey, you're gonna have as-built, you're gonna have your standard protocol stuff. Here's a Corvette compared to a Cadillac, would you like it? It wasn't until the additional intended use was discussed about it can provide the town additional protection. The town gauged how far along they wanted to go with that additional protection. The town told us 1/16 of an inch, which is,
So normally, you would do it after 10 years, but because of trying to be nice,
yeah,
uh,
correct.
of the construction of the pier, you feel that it needs
If the
an
town,
extra look at.
yeah, if the town decides, if the town thinks for any reason that they might want this at some point, the discussion with Jerry was, why don't we do it now and get the additional protection out of it? That was the discussion, was if the town decides they want it in 10 years, or they want it in 2 years, or they want it in 4 years, so be it. But if they think at some point they're gonna wanna do it, hey, here's an additional benefit right now because of this specific project, that you'll get a little bit more out of it, specifically pertaining to warranties and all of that stuff. Corrective work, everything.
And do you know how long our warranty is?
For the work of Consensus specifically, I believe it's 1 year.
So,
For your other things, ins and outs, your mechanical equipment, stuff like, that's all based on the manufacturer, your coatings, all that stuff.
so wouldn't it be a better idea to do it in a year? Because it's supposed to be right now. I mean, how can I
Correct.
say
So
after a
if you
year,
scan it,
it's cracking, it's falling apart, and they're gonna say, well, that's the way it was, that's the crummy work we did initially, and you said it was all right.
Yeah.
I don't think any court of law is gonna say, well.
So the thing was there is, if in a year you go out there with the contractor and you're reviewing it and you do see something, that you have nothing apart from photos that I and LS3P and everyone took to say whether it looked like that or not. That's where they're gonna be like, that's not from us. You might have had someone out here hanging something up, doing something. John Adair may have came out there and finagled with something, and suddenly a saw or whatever hit something, ruined the finish, messed up an HVAC system, did something, and the town has no grounds to really bring it up against a consensus, because the town can't go back and prove they did or they didn't do something to a coating, a finish, a wall, anything. That's the idea behind scanning it now versus then. Because if you come out there and you see a defect and you bring the contractor out there, he's gonna say, well, how do you know it was us? You have nothing. You have pictures that we took, and we can't get everything. That's the human error part in that. I'm telling you right now, I cannot take a picture of every single picket along the length of the pier. I can't take a picture of every single screw. That's it. It's just trying to provide undeniable proof of, no, there, he is correct. There's that point. If we scan the whole thing and we accept it, yeah, it does work both ways. It's, okay, well, they accepted that. So, but the idea is setting a baseline so that nothing above this can happen. It is really what it is.
I got one more question.
Yep.
$17,000.
Yeah.
Is that mostly for all that drone work, or is it to make that 3D model?
To make
What
the
I'm
3D,
asking-
to make the 3D model.
Because if you took a drone up and you took thousands of pictures,
Mm.
and you didn't put it in a 3D, you'd still have those thousands of pictures.
It's all right, so this is how the true full process is this. I go out there, the town has told me that they want the top tier model. So rather than scanning the pier from 50 feet back and only having to do 3 passes, I now have to scan the pier 12 times at 3 feet. It's an angle of projection. You're here versus you're here. This is gonna be a lot worse quality. This is gonna be a lot better, but it's gonna take me a lot longer time to do it. So if I go out there and I scan it at 50 feet, you just want a general 3D model of the pier, can probably do it in 3 hours. And you're not gonna get within, I'll show you an example, 5 feet of the thing, and it's gonna look like a bad video game, or your TV's cutting out. That's what it's gonna look like. The up close, the personal being able to see that crack is why it has to go back and forth on the same area multiple times to make sure it gets everything. It's taking multiple photos of the same area super close up. That's how it does that. If I take it further away, it takes a lot of bigger pictures and meshes them together, and you don't get the same quality, is really what it is at the end of the day. So it is a mix of both flying the drone, it taking 3 hours versus 12 hours, and the additional time that it takes me to take 50 million pictures versus 10,000 pictures and make it all work. Because it, to be honest, does kind of look like some sci-fi movie when you're in there and you're putting all the images together. It's a bunch of, it doesn't look like what you think. It's a bunch of data points, and you have to process all of it, in quotations, process it to get it to project what it's supposed to project. So it's a mix of both. It's not just, it takes longer in data or it takes longer in drone. It's the difference between me flying 3 hours, 12 hours, that sort of thing.
Mr. Mayor.
Complete. That was your last one.
If I get another chance, if I have.
You get one more chance, yeah. Okay, Mr. Stamey.
When you go out there, are you doing this to protect us from now to see things that you might not see by the eye
Yes,
as of right now?
yes. That,
It kind of protects the town from right now, right at this point, to make sure there are no cracks or no bad places all over that pier is what it really amounts to.
yes.
It's
that-
to protect us as of right now.
Yeah.
Is there things on that pier that you ain't seen, maybe, that this drone's gonna pick up, and then you're gonna have the data for that?
And that was the reason I highlighted that I didn't bring it to you initially, was because it's not really used for initial. It's used for 10 years from now when the structure is aged and it's got cracks, and you want to know if it's still good or not. Is the damage repairable? Is it not? That sort of thing. But it's 90% of the time it's used for structures that are over 10, 20 years old, something that has had to weather the elements. The whole conversation that came up with this, the reason I didn't bring it forward is because I didn't think it was necessarily applicable at the time, 6-7 months ago, and I thought it was rather expensive. It just didn't seem justifiable to me. Like I said, that the amount of money that the town has had to spend and stuff they've had to deal with on the pier, and maybe I made the wrong decision. I decided for you that no, it wasn't really justified. I couldn't see a clear path forward as to why I bring it forward for you. Then me and Jerry got into the discussion of all the other items that have had to come up and things that have had to be corrected. It's just really at the end of the day trying to protect the town more with all the items that have really come up in the last, bit of 6 months. What are you looking at? What are you up against? How do we really just drive the point home that you're protected? That's the goal.
When it's scanning, does it scan the whole thing, the buildings, inside the buildings, top of the buildings?
So that was something I talked with Jerry about. The question that I had a few days ago to confirm with Barrett was, can I fly inside the buildings? And Barrett's response was, if you're a good enough pilot, you can. And I said, okay. I said, well, that's what I promised the town. I said, that's what I'm gonna try and do. And he said, well, we have think of when you look at a house for sale online that has the 3D thing, it's that, but it's on steroids. That's going to be included in this. There is no additional cost for that because I'm gonna go in there and move it around 10,000 times and it's going to do the exact same thing that the drone is doing. I just have to move it because it's on a tripod. So dirty car salesman, that's being thrown in with the deal, set of car fresheners. But you're gonna have stair towers, you're gonna have the buildings, you're gonna have the second floor, the first floor, and the town can use that later if they're wanting to market something, but it's a little bit more intense than you got on realtor.com and looked at it. It's measurements, it's a bunch of stuff. It's not just you can click around the floor and look at different angles. It's gonna do the same data collection as the drone is doing, just I have to move it. I've already kind of set up that floor plan for the buildings where it's gonna actually have to be put to do that.
Mr. Mayor.
Amy, you done?
Yes.
Thanks.
No problem.
Mr.
Mr. Wallace?
I'd like to offer just a scenario.
Yeah.
Help me with this, because I'm.
Yeah.
We do the scan.
Mhm.
We find a few flaws, we ask them to fix it, they fix it.
Mhm.
Okay. We accept it. We have a 1-year warranty.
Mhm.
6 months from now, some problem goes on that we may or may not have seen, but we didn't bring it to their attention. We accepted it.
Mhm.
What good is this to me?
So
At
you're
that
not,
point.
when you accept, when I issue substantial completion, you're not accepting it and it voiding that warranty. If something goes wrong within that period, within 1 year, they have to fix it. The point of the drone is to say, it's not the town's fault that something messed up. The town didn't go out there and hang some anchor off the side of the rails. The town didn't start moving, John and them didn't go out there and start moving siding and this and that and break a piece off. It's just giving them that baseline that they can't say, well, we don't know what the town came out here and did after the fact. You got tenants in here, they could have been chopping, cutting, their contractors, they could have done that stuff. No, this is what it looked like. This is what it looks like now. Because of this, we can say that it's your work is the reason this overhang is now sagging. Because right now, everything, truthfully, it's brand new timber, it's brand new steel studs, all that stuff. We just had to have them go in there and recoat every single steel member in the building because they were rusting. So like that's been an issue before. So the discussion there is, I keep referring to an overhang sagging because that's what I imagine within the first year. There's wood in there mixed in with that steel and it's tied together. And if it starts to get warped or if there's a leak and it starts to warp, it's going to sag. And at that point, you can tell them definitively, no, this is your work, fix it. That's all it is. It's just giving something that they can't argue about within that period, that warranty period. If the town kind of looks at it and they don't really think all that much is going to go wrong within that 1 year period, then you don't have to vote yes on it. It's if you don't think that benefit is really worth justifying it right now, then don't vote yes. It's the added part right now is really the reason we're sitting here discussing it, and we're talking about voting on it on the 23rd. Not because what's going to happen in 3 or 4 years. It's just to protect the town a lot better within that first year, year and a half, that sort of thing. I can look back more specifically and tell you what exactly their warranty period is. It's over 6 months. Typically, it's a year.
I totally get that
Yeah.
piece, Zane. What, I'm just trying to make sure, because of the issues that we've had with the construction, I would definitely, I'm open to looking at
Yeah.
further ways to ensure
Yeah.
the town against anything that we
And-
haven't caught so
Yeah.
far
And it's,
during that first year. But the thing about it is I'm wanting to make sure that this investment
Yeah.
will actually benefit us beyond
Mhm.
us taking this very, very in-depth look at the existing structure.
Yeah.
And saying, okay, you've done all the things we've asked you to do.
Yeah.
We'll accept it, substantially accept it, and then that's what I'm trying to find out.
Yeah.
How down the road, if it sags, well, we didn't see that then, but if it sags,
Yeah.
this can help us recover.
yeah, it can help you with the insurance, it can help you with warranties, stuff like that.
That's
That's where it's gonna help you is with that.
thank
Hey,
you.
when we accepted it, we didn't accept it as a sagging roof. It wasn't sagging then, when we accepted it, but here it is now, it's sagging. So here's our proof that it didn't look like that when we accepted it. That's the discussion. It didn't look like that when we accepted it. Here's what it looks like now. That's kind of why I was jumping with the rescanning something to confirm what it looks like. You don't need to do that. This is what it looked like when we accepted it. Any deviation from that is what's wrong with it. That's what it is at the end of the day.
Thanks for your patience.
Yeah, no, I've had to do my own homework. I've used it 2 or 3 times, but never had to, I guess, put it in front of somebody. It's just something that I have had to learn myself about bringing it forward and explaining it in a way that makes sense, because I don't always explain it either. I'm trying to think of.
Oh, sorry.
I was trying to make sure that I kind of, I guess, hit everything, and that really at the end of that, that's the point that I want to drive home. The last conversation with Jerry was all about the additional warranty protection. It wasn't about whether you wanted to scan now, 6 months, 10 months, whenever. I just gave it to him as here's what it about would cost if you wanted it done, do with that what you want. It was the discussion about the additional protection for the town. That was it. That's why he was like, well, we need to, really talk it out in front of the town and explain what it is and see what they think about that portion of it specifically, the extra additional protection from that. That's all it is.
Okay. Do we have any other questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Kreklau?
I have a question about the as-built drawings.
Okay.
I mean, the pier is completely different than the way it was designed. So I'm assuming, and sometimes that gets you into a lot of trouble, but I'm assuming that at that point in time, those drawings made up of what it is now.
Mhm.
And has there been good practices as far as the as-built? Because I know you haven't been with the project the whole time. And
So Collins, we have, the as-bills are the sole responsibility of the contractor under this contract.
Okay,
So they're to produce all of that. The most recent conversation that we've had was that they're in the middle of working on all of it. We go through what they submit and say yes or no. Either you have provided everything or you have not.
well, and doing the scan would be a good double check as far as the as-bills being what they say they are.
Correct.
And
Well, we know what, if something's good or not. The scan is just
Right.
giving you an actual as-built. This is what it looks like. This is what it was framed out of, all that sort of stuff.
And it's more of just a basis to go on later to see what has went on. For example, the overhang.
Mhm.
Even if it shows that it's drooping and it wasn't, you could still say somebody put an end loader up there on top of the roof and
Yeah.
did it. And then it's the legal matter.
Mhm.
It's a whole, I'm just trying to clarify that it's not end all to any issues we might have, because most contractors are going to try to
Yeah.
get out of doing anything.
And that's essentially what I'm trying to say, is it helps you put them in a lot tighter corner
Correct.
than, everything else.
So I guess my biggest issue is with the as-bills, because leaving the contractor up to it is just not
Yeah, no,
the way to do it.
the contractor is not the decision maker on the as-bills.
Okay.
The same as everything else, he provides it to Collins and LS3P. We review all of it, and they get it accepted as submitted, rejected, revise and resubmit. One of those three, and that's kind of why we've been trying to get them ahead of the curve with them, is because your exact point, a lot has changed. You're not talking about a 1,200 square foot house. You're talking about a 830 foot or 833 foot long pier. And there's a lot of things in between the front and the back of that pier. So it's trying to do that, making it a little bit easier as far as navigating the as-bills as well.
Absolutely. You have the floor.
My other question is I believe, this is just my opinion, that most of the work that has been in question has been the podium. It has not been the pier itself. I'm not saying that the pier shouldn't have a baseline as far as for later on to look at it, but I think that the podium and the buildings on the podium could be handled just by photos, basically. I don't see that the drone, you can do the quarter inch with photos if you got a high res camera and you have the GPS equipment attached to it to piece them all together. I don't know if this software does it, but I'm sure it's out there with photos.
Yeah, I can't really comment on that, because that's not what
Okay.
that's not what I'm selling here. So I don't, I can't jump into
I guess that's all I really have. I mean, if you want to expand on it, but I have some issues with what it costs myself.
And that maybe I should have led with that a little bit better too, is that it's based on the resolution that Jerry and John told me they wanted. So I can send you some other stuff about over the weekend of ones that don't have the same resolution, pretty much. I can show you ones that don't look as good as the highest resolution one, and then that can be something you look at. Do we think this is sufficient, or do we want something more? But
that's not going to show you down to the screws that start rusting through again.
Correct. It's not.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Kinkett.
it's a lot of money, but it's a baseline, and there's a lot of concrete up there. And there's two kinds of concrete: the kind that is already cracked, and the kind that's going to crack.
Yeah.
And I think we need, maybe not from a warranty standpoint, but a way to judge whether we're losing excessive concrete or having excessive cracking.
Mhm.
I'm hoping that's not an issue, but it's just a lot of concrete.
Yeah.
And it was all poured in one day.
Yeah.
Mm.
And we're still trying to correct some of that.
Yeah.
So I think the town needs a baseline.
Yeah.
And there's just too many moving parts for us not to have a really accurate baseline.
Mhm.
And it may not be a warranty issue. It may be something else that we have to look at down the road. But if we don't have a baseline, I just don't. You got a $20 million pier, and you want to spend $1,800 or $18,000 for a baseline. I'm kind of in favor of that. So, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Coleman.
I know Mr. Vincent and Mr. Dare, who aren't residents in this town, who don't pay taxes, want the premium package. It's not that money. Is there a good package we could get, you know, maybe we can't see every single screw.
Mhm.
But something that can possibly be real good, but not perfect. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
if a screw is coming out somewhere, I don't care.
Yeah.
But if we got serious cracks, we got chunks of concrete coming
Yeah.
out, that's a problem.
Yeah.
I know that they're used to a blank check. I don't like blank checks.
Yeah.
I'm here because I'm a resident, I've been a resident a long time. I'm tired of wasteful spending. And I'm not saying doing it at all, doing this is a waste. I'm just saying, do we really need the super duper premium package?
Yeah.
Or can we get, is it possible you can give us different resolutions
Yeah,
and different price points of where they are? So that we can have have more of information. This has happened to us before with cameras. Told us we need 57 cameras. Guess how many cameras we're gonna have now?
16.
After the council, 16.
Yeah.
So this is my problem with staff coming to, I mean, they do a good job, but sometimes they go the easy route and they wanna do, get the premium package.
Yeah. And I think too, kind of the real reason it's been mostly kind of discussion between John and myself is him being the public facilities director. Him and those guys at the end of the day are really going to be the ones that are using it, that are looking at it, that are trying to look at any facility, any piece of equipment, anything like that on site. Those are your guys that are really gonna be looking at it. Truthfully, it's not gonna be anyone from the town council or anything that's just decided one day. Now you can, but you're not just gonna randomly start looking at it. You know, it's more or less, there's an application for it, and his job and his responsibilities, that's where it fits. It's maintenance of the buildings, maintenance of the pier, all of that stuff. Absolutely, I can do that. That's kind of what I was trying to get to is the price is adjustable. It's just all gauged on, now you know what the cost is for the top tier one. So it's kind of works its way down, and then that is just a matter of, at the end of the day, how far away of the pier am I flying, and how many times do I have to go back and forth to get anywhere from a rough estimate to an accurate number of what is actually there, what's it gonna take, how long is it gonna take to do it.
I guess one further thing, and it's not to you, it's to the town residents who are sitting here, and if anyone's listening, I wanna know what you wanna know. Necessarily, it doesn't mean it's gonna happen, but I like to know what the residents wanna do, it's their money. And we seem to get in these positions, decide, we know what's best for you, so that's all I have to say, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if you're
I'll
finished,
allow one more.
if you finish, or when you finish, can we suspend Robert's rules and let the public that's here come up and, because they've sit here and listened to it, if anybody wants to say anything to us, could we do that?
I'll consider it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, then I guess it's my turn. I've been writing notes,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna jump around a little, I'm sure.
Okay.
If I had to summarize this, it's basically, you're saying this is an insurance policy, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And you said that the reason that you thought that it was applicable now, though it wasn't 3-4 months ago, is because of the amount of rework.
Correct.
Is the rework suspect at all?
Right now, well, so long as they perform it and we have it tested and it passes, that's great. But there are plenty of stipulations in the specifications of the project that say if rework blank is completed and it becomes faulty, it is the contractor's liability and responsibility to fix it. All the staining on the, yes.
But you've been inspecting, scrutinizing carefully over the last
Yes.
several months.
Yes.
And I'm assuming the rework is being done properly.
Correct.
Okay. You mentioned that this removes human error. And somewhere through all the slides, you showed what looked like a math model to me.
Yeah.
I was automotive engineering
Yeah.
That's what I dealt with. So I assume that the software is looking at that and picking the path that the drone is flying and what it's photographing.
Correct. So this one specifically will, yes, connect, just like a total station for surveys, will connect to the satellites. And there's a portion where we control and a portion where it knows what to do. It detects everything that is, so it doesn't run into something. So it controls its path. We provide the area that it needs to fly in, and we tell it how far to fly from every single object that it, and then in its AI mind, it calculates, okay, I have completed it, I have it. So that's the removal of the human part.
And then it came up about, legally acceptable in court. And I think if I could summarize your answer, basically, this is an accepted technique. DOT recognizes
Yeah.
it. So if any expert witness had to be called in, that would lend the credibility. Correct, okay. You said that, rescans, and I'm not trying to nail down a dollar, but 50%, 75%, you said much less. Just ballparking.
I would like to say 50%, truly. I mean, that's it, because it's, at that point, I have the pass, I can give the robot the pass to know where to fly. There's no longer this large part up front that has to be prepared.
Okay.
Pretty much is what it is. It's really I know how far it needs to fly at that point. I know how long it's gonna take it. I know all of that stuff. So there's less proposal approximation in there. I don't have to assume it's gonna take me 12 hours to do this pier. I know it took me, I said 12 last time, but it took me 10 and a half, or it took me 11. And the robot already has that path now, so I don't have to sit there and do all the hand stuff and everything to get it to pick up that path. And then, there's just that initial portion of the work to get it done is no longer involved in it. There's that initial portion of the rendering that was involved that is no longer needed for it. That's where it starts to cut in half relatively quickly. There's a lot of that.
And then there were a couple of questions from members here about the rescanning. But I think if we have damage, we see, we're noting it, whether it's, after a storm or something, but it's John Adair's crew probably being out there and seeing something that looks suspect. That's why we wouldn't do a rescan because of a major storm or something like that, because now we're dealing with things that are visible.
Yeah.
And then we can refer to the baseline if we need to, but at that point, it's pretty obvious we need to do something. Okay. The resolution, 1/16 of an inch, and a few of the questions touched upon that. I believe you quoted you'd be flying within about 4 feet.
Yeah.
So 6 feet, 8 feet, what, if the resolution is proportional.
I can, when I give that price, what I'll have to do is go back and look at the other models and see where they flew at and what the final resolution of the pictures were. So that's what I'm gonna have to do to give up that price. I'm gonna have to look at one that was flown 10 feet away, one that was 50 feet away, one that was 80 feet away, and see what the final product was.
So I'm oversimplifying. It's not just quite 5 feet.
Yeah, it's not like a carpenter saying it's like 1 foot of wood at blank price. I'm gonna have to look back, see how long it took them, that sort of thing is all.
I'll put you on the spot a little bit.
All right.
1/16 of an inch, in your professional opinion, is that necessary?
For this application, no, because we're talking about bridges that are 80 years old and you can't get to them, and you've really got to make sure you're load rating a bridge. Bridge was built like this, it was this age, it was brand new, made out of all this stuff, and this is the load it could carry. Well, how many 1/16 of an inch cracks, how many 1/8 of an inch cracks, how many 3/16 do we have? And we're using it to say, okay, that bridge can't take that anymore. That bridge can only take 20 tons rather than 40 tons. So for the pier to say that, I mean, ideally right now, there shouldn't be any cracks over 1/16 of an inch. We just had them seal all of them for the most part. If there's some that maybe we've, that sort of thing. So no, it's not really applicable in this situation because the pier's not 80 years old and been used 1,000 times. There's not a lot of defects. There's no cracks. The spalls have been patched. The the cracks have been patched, all of that stuff. So no, I do not think that a 1/16 of an inch is necessary to be observing cracks. That is truly applicable if in 5 or 6 years, John Adair and them decide that they actually want a structural inspection of the pier done, and we have to look back at all the math behind all the cracks and see how many there are and all the, numbers behind that. And then,
So if I'm understanding you properly, you would advise the final resolution later?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would, right now, I would advise somewhere in the middle. You don't want something that looks horrible at that point. It was a waste of money if all you can do is look at the building from 50 feet away. But no, I don't think you need a 1/16 of an inch resolution to measure a crack.
An eighth?
An eighth,
Three? Yeah.
I'd honestly, yeah, it's just, you don't need that.
Can you work that into the?
Yeah, when I go back, I'm gonna look at how long it should take to fly 10 foot, 20 foot, 30 foot, 40 foot. Once you break 30 foot, you start getting into that bad video game look. You get down to 4 foot, 5 foot, and suddenly you're looking at a 1/16 of an inch resolution on stuff.
You have any plans this weekend?
No.
I mean, we're looking for this by Tuesday.
I know. Okay.
Can we mix and match? Can we have a tighter resolution in the podium and the stairs
Yeah,
and the railing
you can.
versus the pier?
A lot of people don't want that because then they're like, oh, I can really zoom in on this area. Why can't I? And they start to assume that something's wrong with the file. When in reality, we flew it at 20 feet over here and 5 feet over there at the request of the client, not because we were being lazy. And so but we can do that if that's something that y'all want. If you're not too worried about certain parts of it, it's a mix and match thing. It doesn't have to be all one tier level, the next tier level. That we can move the drone flies wherever you want it to fly. So you can make it adjust how you want.
What I'd like you to do, me personally, I don't know about the rest of the guys, but the rest of the people.
Getting this fella.
No, guys, it's neutral.
Guys, okay, guys is neutral in today's world. But I guess what I'd like you to do is, again, in your professional opinion,
Mhm.
does that make it complicated, make it less usable to John Adair and his crew? So, and save $500, I'm realizing I'm asking you to speculate a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm making it more complicated, but
I think if I talked to John and saw where he really thought he was going to be looking, if I really asked him, hey, on a daily basis, what are you actually doing? Like, where is it? If you walked out to the pier, what are you going to be looking at?
okay.
And then from there I could say, okay, yeah, we'll scan those areas more important. So if he ever needs to go back, but there is going to be a part of it where Collins has to look at it and say, this is probably going to be an area where there might be issues or this, and those are the areas we spend more time scanning than, say, the end of the pier out there. Now it's already, it's one of those, we're not going to be as concerned with the end of the pier as we are the building overhangs or the windows or the top of the concrete or the bottom of the concrete, that sort of thing.
Very good. You mentioned operator training, because I was thinking, who is going to use this stuff?
Yeah.
But, so that's included.
Yeah, I would put together a class for John Adair and them so that they actually, I can't just give you a product and you not know how to use the product.
That's exactly what I was looking at.
Yeah,
I'm like,
it's
who's gonna
not
do this?
Yeah.
I'm not going back in there.
That would occur for most likely the first couple. I mean, if I assume even after, if John has a new guy come in and John's like, hey, Zane, I don't really feel comfortable teaching him. Could you, it's going to take 2 seconds for me to show him what it is he's looking at. I mean, that's going to start to envelop into part of John's job title as well, is here's a software that he has to teach his new or younger employee or someone that he's training. But at the end of the day, if he has a question, he can call me.
So you'd offer support,
Yeah.
at least to some degree.
That's what the $250 a year is for. It's not only maintaining the file, make sure it's all clean and nothing happens to it, and it's in a safe, secure location. It's also, if you need help with something, you call us, and that's what it is.
Okay. So we've got a 3D model. Is this all perpendicular normal to the surfaces, or is it looking around so I can see around corners and so
So
on?
that's what I was trying to show you there. You can scan every portion of it. That's yes, the answer to that is you can scan you can go around corners. That's what I was trying to show you right there, is that I can sit there and shift inside and out of the, 1 second. But to that exact point, that's what I was trying to show you a minute ago, is that you can go into the bridge and you're not looking at it in a planar view.
Okay.
North side, south side, you can rotate underneath. So this drone is all part of this same model. So for all intents and purposes, I'm looking at the top of the pier right now. I want to see the side, and I start rotating it. And I look, and then, well, I want to see the bottom side. I just keep rotating, and then I start zooming in. And just, when you have your mouse and everything, and you zoom in. So it's not
And
a,
as you get right up tight, it's still the same?
that's the
Okay.
1/16. That's where you're getting right into the, you can do that. And they may have not done on this bridge, but if we did the 1/6, so yes, you'd be able to see the head of a bolt or a crack in a piece of concrete, whatever it is, a stress fracture in a piece of steel, whatever it is.
And is that also how, you mentioned section loss on part, is that kind of? part-
Yeah, so
part of the-
that's really where the 1/16 of an inch thing comes in. That's why that has to be drilled in, because that is our lowest level on a crack. That's the lowest number we will notate on a crack or a section loss, is a 1/16 of an inch. And that's in a beam, that's in a steel beam, that's in a piece of concrete, whatever it is. That's why we say 1/16 of an inch. It's because that's the lowest. If you hired us to do a structural observation report, the lowest number you would see is 1/16 of an inch.
Okay. And then you mentioned, that you've used this for bridges and
Yeah.
never for a pier. And, the guy kind of rappelling down the side and
Yeah.
400-foot drop and so on and so forth. I mean,
And that's
why
kind of
we
the,
don't usually do
yeah,
it.
it's the high friction specialty area of the pier as well. If the town asked us to perform a structural observation and they said do the entire pier, well, it's not gonna be the same cost as us doing a bridge, because now we've got to get a barge or a boat or something out there and set it between those piles while we climb up there, hang there with a ladder, whatever it is. The cost goes up a lot.
Okay.
But if you have the drone, you don't have to spend it keeps the cost low for the client. You don't have to spend all this money with special equipment and special safety measures to make sure that you can actually just inspect a 5-foot area of concrete.
Well, and we generally have a
Mr.
lot of
Mayor,
90.
we didn't relax Robert's rules.
What?
Every person gets like 2 times to speak on a subject. You've had me, and
I-
other people have had more than 2.
I thought I was on my one.
No,
I-
well, if you do it on one, you get 10 minutes.
Have I used 10 minutes? I wasn't watching the clock.
Ask the rest of council.
Is that, I mean,
I get to
if
make
they
the
have
decision,
questions
Jeff.
though, I want them to ask them. I mean, I don't want,
No,
I don't
and
know if
I just don't want any
Robert's
problem
rule,
with,
you can talk all day long.
I just don't want any problem with the rest of council.
I do
That's
feel-
all.
I
I'm
mean,
fine
okay,
with it,
okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, let's do it this way, to be completely above board. Is there any objection to suspending Robert's rules?
You have to do a motion.
I had to make a motion, somebody had a second.
So, okay,
I'll make the motion, we suspend Robert's rules for the rest of the meeting.
Okay.
Second.
all in favor? Okay.
okay.
They're
Now,
suspended.
Ask me the questions that you have that aren't limited to
Okay,
2.
I am getting close to wrapping up anyway. Yeah. I wasn't checking the time. Yeah, so I guess we don't have those complicated sections and so forth. We've got a lot more
Yeah,
90-degree
and
angles
that,
such.
yeah, and that kind of, for this bridge, the length of this bridge and the size of, this isn't a 1-day thing or a 2-day thing like the pier. This is we're going out there days on end, on weeks to scan every inch of this bridge. The pier is not like that. The pier is in essence, a simple span bridge. Something holding it up, something spinning between, and that's it. Then you get to the articulation parts of this screw on this picket and all of that. Yeah, that's gonna take a little bit more time, but nowhere near as much as that. Every single one of those flanges, beams, connection rods, all of that stuff, your hardware is what they're trying to look at.
Okay. You said that we would actually own the model.
Yeah.
You would maintain it, and we could share it.
Yeah.
Can we share it with the contractor? I mean, we kind of have to some degree, at least some results of it, if we have a dispute.
And I get that.
Yeah, so that, you can share it with whoever you like. It's your piece of property. So you want to share it with the contractor in its entirety, yes. If you don't, no. I mean, yes, to bring forward a piece of evidence would then, yes, in essence, be giving him a portion of it, but you're not talking about giving him access to the model or anything. This is all printable. So I can zoom in to where exactly it is we're talking about and take a bunch of snippets overall shots of that area. And then he gets a piece of paper with a picture on it. He's not getting access to the model or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
And going through that basically was the end of my questions, so.
You suspended Robert rules for that.
That's okay, that's okay.
Did anyone else have any questions or
Is there
comments?
anything else? Yes.
No, I think we're just.
How much difference do you think the cost is gonna be to go to the next?
So like through the tiers?
What do you think? Is it gonna be worth the difference to get the best?
To be honest with you, I don't want to say yes or no because I really want the extra protection for the town. At the end of the
I
day,
think
I have the biggest
That's the
issue with the
same
price.
thing for
That's
us.
the thing for me.
it is for
Same
me,
thing works.
but I have a concern about
Oh, I
other
know.
things too, besides just.
I know.
I mean, there's some things that's gonna be concerning.
That'll be something that you will have that in your inbox or at least Jerry's before Monday. I can do that. I can have that too.
Oh, bless your
Again,
heart. I know you gotta get us ready for Tuesday, but
I am looking for, mixed resolutions, building area versus, or however you want to break it down, and then what those resolutions should be for each of those areas. And
yeah.
I don't want us telling you,
Yeah.
you know this stuff better than we do, so I'd like to hear from you.
I think at the end of the day, giving you a bit more information like you're asking that's doable and that's fine. I completely understand that.
Since we have suspended Robert's rules and we have still about a dozen people that have patiently sat through, is there anybody who wants to speak?
May I ask a question?
Mr. Kinkin, still asking, sorry.
Hello?
Oh.
Hi.
I see somebody. Okay.
I don't have to get up there, do I?
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah, so anybody can
I
hear
thought we
you,
were suspending the rules.
but you can't hear you.
people that aren't here don't know
Got my
who you are, so
glasses,
in
I
the
can't see
record.
that far, but I'm Sandy Barnes over at 715 Pine Drive. First of all, I don't even know who he is. You should have introduced him. I don't know who he worked for. I didn't.
I thought
I learned
I
something of
said
what his
Mr. Peterson at
qualifications
the
are.
beginning of
You
the
did.
meeting. He's from Collins Engineering.
Well, I know, and I don't know what his qualifications are. I didn't know anything about this that's going on. But first of all, did we put this out to bid?
This is a service that Collins Engineering is suggesting we might use.
Okay.
Collins already,
They've already inspected the pier. How did they do it if you didn't use a drone?
Visual.
Just a visual? So you want us
What's
to
the, I'm
pay
sorry,
for,
I'm sorry, what's the question?
how did you inspect the pier?
As far as the project's timeline?
you should probably be.
You gotta talk.
Yeah, you gotta talk.
When you got,
We'll split.
no, I mean, if you were the engineering company
Yeah.
that found these defects or whatever, how did you do that if you didn't use a
We
drone?
walked through the entire pier.
See, I even
apart
use a
from
drone
the-
at my house. We had one. We put it up on the roof to see after a storm and everything. I can't believe you didn't have that tool already to find these defects. Am I making sense to you? I mean, why didn't you,
I
they don't
think-
have that tool to,
No,
No,
they
so
do
we
have
don't-
the tool. Go ahead,
Yeah,
you said.
okay, all right, here, I'll do this. The pier is made of precast concrete beams. Those beams are made in a factory, pre-strand, inspected before they come out. We then inspect them before they're installed to make sure that they're compliant. Those are not an item that becomes defective over time. That's why they're precast or a much more controlled environment. The deckings along the top of the pier, which are directly connected to the length of the pier, are all walkable and visible, do not require a drone. The substructures underneath those were all walkable and inspectable. When they were installed, they were all approved. The shade structure at the end of the pier was observed to not be code compliant nor compliant with the design documents. Those were all replaced and repaired per our visual inspection. So the only portions that we cannot access by foot have already been inspected and approved prior to all of this. This is not an inspection. This is doing a 3D model scan of the pier. We don't use, we're not doing the original intended and purpose of inspecting this structure with that drone. We're using it to create a 3D model for the town. The town wants it inspected while they're doing that, we can do that, but we've maintained that through the project's lifespan, so it's not like it needs an initial or final big inspection apart from your general walkthroughs in the contract.
Okay, so we've already paid you to do visual inspections.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Correct? Okay, but, so you really didn't need to use a drone at all? Is that what you're saying?
No, the intended purpose of this though isn't,
Not this, the inspections. You didn't need one. Is that what you're saying?
no.
You didn't need one. Okay, you can borrow mine. Also, like Mr. Coleman said though, it's a good idea to get different scenarios
Mhm.
that would be workable possibly. And the warranty period is 1 year, because I got it 10 years on mine.
Yeah, so that's the contractor's warranty period. That's dependent on the warranty that the contractor
When does that
brings forth.
start?
When I issue substantial completion.
And that's based visually right now.
Yes.
I mean, you should, that's gonna be just visual.
Yes. What other way would there be apart from the visual? What do you mean?
I don't know. Flying around.
Okay, I think this is not going anywhere. He's covered all of this. This is
Okay.
what we were talking about for an hour. Sorry.
2 hours.
Is there any other comments?
How's everybody today? My name is Jimmy, I live on Surfside Drive.
Jimmy, your last name?
Marie, I live at 516 Surfside Drive.
Thank you.
I listen to everything, you're doing a great job selling it up there. I hear you keep, going back, using the expression, dirty car salesman, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you are up here selling.
Yeah.
Trying to sell yourself, sell your product, right?
Yeah.
I would make a suggestion, and it looks like everybody's in agreement, we need a base, something to go on. I mean, we done spent $20 million, what the hell's another 18 grand, right? That's the way I look at it. But you gotta have, so what's the purpose of doing it now? If we don't do it now, we got a 1-year warranty. Why not, everything's negotiable, okay? So we negotiating with this guy. Why not have him come back, go ahead and do the scan, pay him the 18 grand where we got a base, come back in 11 months, do another one, a second one. Let that be the part that we negotiate in that 18 grand. Give us 2 scans.
Yeah.
That way, in 11 months, we can go back, if we do it down to a 1/16 of an inch, we can look at it.
Yeah.
See where we stand. Then we can go back to the contractor. If something's changed or whatever, if we got problems, we can get it in before the 12 months term is out. That's the way I look at it. I mean, the purpose of doing it one time, what's the whole purpose of it if we're not gonna do it for 10 years from now? What if we don't have any storms in the next year? So give us something to compare it to. Get something for our money if we won't spend it. That's what I'm saying. Negotiate.
Thank you for the input. Any other comments?
Hi. Yvette Hellier, 727th Avenue North. I have a couple of comments. I don't understand why there's all this concern about consensus. I haven't seen any reports. I don't know if you put them anywhere to be read. So I think that there's a lot of fear being generated. So it's created by innuendo and gossip, and there's a lot of bad publicity or anecdotal information on the internet. And I don't think that's very nice because it goes outside of Surfside Beach and it creates a very negative impression on our town. We already have a really hard time trying to bring business into town, and that just fosters it continually. The biggest jewel in our town that's going to be made is creating a very negative impression with the pier. It's in the newspaper, it's in the press, etc. So this isn't going to make it any better by doing that. Number two, I agree with Harry. Why do we have to have this huge premier showcase of an item? Why not rent a drone instead of pay $18,000 to have this model created? Because if you go on the internet, there's huge write-ups about doing models in federal government journal articles and so forth. You put it in the file, it's there, it's dated, it's signed, it's available for your 1-year warranty. It can be used in court if necessary. It's paid for, stamped and sealed, and then it's there, but you don't have to have it for its entirety because it's not going to be used all the time. If you need it in 5 years, 10 years, the software, the equipment can have changed with technology improvements, and you can go on to do the purchase or the renting again of equipment later on for whatever you need it, so that it's necessary. A pier is a lot different than a bridge. Bridges have highways, they take on 1, 2, 18-ton trucks, there's stress factors, there's all sorts of day-to-day wear and tear. Our pier is only going to have foot traffic, and then it's built for hurricanes. So that's a lot different than what's going on with the modeling we saw today in Zane's examples that dealt with bridges. So I don't think that it's the same set of examples that should be applied to our pier. So yeah, it may take him 12 hours or 24 hours to do what he needs to do for modeling, but it's a one-time thing as opposed to what goes on with dealing with bridges. So I think that's a factor you all should consider in the differences. And I agree with what Laverne said, in that when it comes to the retail shops and the roof lines and the windows and everything, high resolution photography is there. It's always been there. And you can use those for your files for ensuring that the information is there, again, signed, sealed, and put into the folder to ensure that it's there a year later when you need to look at. And as far as consensus, they've always come back to try to make good because their reputation is on the line. So they're going to want to make sure that they treat this town well. They're not out to get us. So the responsibility is on them to be good partners. And to say anything disparaging is not fair. And they're not here to defend themselves. So I think we ought to all work together. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Just a quick question, and I'm allowed
Yes,
to
sir.
speak for a living. It's LiDAR technology you're using in this drone, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Kinkin.
Zane, and of course, they're not here, but why did John and Jerry think the 1/16 of an inch is what we needed? Do you know their reasoning behind that? Because I'm sure you gave them options too, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. It wasn't initially just 1/16 or an inch or nothing. Like
Yeah.
it was, how clean do you want it? And I showed him what one looked like 100 foot back and kind of what happened. And I showed him one super close up. I think maybe more or less he just obviously saw the one super close up and said, "Oh wow, that's great." We clarified again that that's the one that costs the most amount of money to be able to do that. It's the most scans, all that, all that
Okay.
stuff. And he said, well, let's just, let's see a price of that and we'll go from there. So kind of the same exact point where we ended up here. We want to see a price for something less and we'll see where we end up at.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Anything else? Oh, I see a hand. Okay.
My name's Keith Ashley. I live at 418 13th Avenue North. So I've heard
insurance mentioned as one reason why we would want this product. You know, with insurance, you always have to consider the probability that something's going to occur or that something's going to happen, and then you have to weigh the cost against that probability. That's one thing I want to say. Second thing is, I'm assuming our pier is going to be regularly inspected. Is that a true statement? By someone? I guess my point is
I'd
this.
have to get it from Mr. Dare.
My point is this: if we're going to spend this amount of money on something, is it just going to sit on the shelf? When are we really going to use it and need it? If someone's not out there visually inspecting, is this just a toy for someone to play with? Third thing, the continuing cost. We've already heard $250. But, you know, if we have staff turnover, is there any additional cost then to retrain new people coming in to use this thing? So again, my personal opinion, this, and I think you said this is something that's mainly used for older structures, 10, 15. You want to know what's the condition, is it still safe? For me, as far as I'm concerned, I don't see the benefits of this right now compared to the cost. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Stamey.
on that topic that he just brought up, John will have a personnel on the pier who will do visual inspections of stuff on the pier. That will happen on a regular basis. So
Yeah,
there will be an employee out there.
Yeah, I just don't know the schedule.
Yeah.
You know, how
Well, I
often
mean,
it's
you won't know the schedule, but there will be, I'm sure, a visual inspection of everything. Because even when we have a bridge or a culvert, they visual inspections done so many times a year just here in town for other things. So you know good and well it's something that big and an employee out there that it should be, it's going to be inspected by a visual.
All right. Do we have anything else?
Mr. Mayor, I might make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
I was gonna say, I don't think we need to have comments after all this. So, we have a motion to adjourn and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Zane.